A lot of new topics have popped up, not just CERN, but antimatter and all kinds of occult, nefarious things happening with the Super Bowl. And there's just a lot that's coming together, what I like to call the coalescence of topics that are falling under the large umbrella of disclosure. And perhaps we can go into that tonight. Yeah. Well, credit goes to JD. I mean, really, he's the talented one. I just feed him some information and he runs with it. And he understands the physics. He understands the occult. He understands the cultural implications of what's going on in mainstream media. So he really has his finger on the pulse as well. And yeah, a lot of people know me by CERN, but I really delve into a lot of the areas in science, from DNA to transhumanism to um, boy, you can name the topic, and I've covered it in over 300 hours of interviews just in the past year. And I'm not trying to puff myself up. I'm just trying to let people know that there is a wealth of information out there, not only that I'm presenting, but you guys are doing a great job of presenting with your guests as well. And I think this is the leading show in terms of providing factual, hard-hitting information that people can really use. And I
Oh,
try to keep
thank
my
you.
answers fairly short, so I'll stop.
Well, no need to do that. We don't, and as listeners know and viewers know, we don't like to talk over our guests and give our guests plenty of latitude and room to explore into explore the topics. And that's what we're going to do tonight, because you have uncovered and provided and identified a lot of information about CERN, about the telescope. Maybe we could begin here, if you don't mind. The video that you and JD did, Disclosure,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really tongue
We
tied
were
when it
just
comes to asking the questions.
talking about this before the show.
Yeah,
The in the video, there is it shows the a new type of telescope, or a new way of assembling the telescope that is different from the Galileo model of
right.
telescopes.
Yeah, I mean, who'd have thought that? Number one, and number two, are you know, you want to talk about this? Walk me through this, because I'm not sure I understand the technology or what in the world I was looking at. Uh, could it be an artifact of just the concave or convex placement of the lenses?
Well, that would be the first, I think, reaction when you look at the images that are captured on a standard single reflex lens camera. This is a binocular or a dual telescope that has been set up, and they're fairly small. I mean, they're just, things that you can carry around yourself. We're not talking about an observatory like Mount Graham in Arizona, but we'll get to that in a moment. But this is a project, and, in the past, you've heard me talk about the Thunderbolts project in terms of the electric universe. Well, this is a similar name in the sense it's called Thunder Energies Corporation. So, a little synchronicity going on with the names there. But Thunder Energies is out of Florida, and Dr. Centilli is the chief scientist at Thunder Energies Corporation, and he's the one who has been doing, I would say, about 50 years of research into antimatter itself, and has developed his own mathematical language, which is a complete departure from the standard model of mathematical language of trigonometry and that sort of thing that is used in standard physics, standard science today to write out the theorems and the formula that we typically see in science. He has a different form of mathematics that describes antimatter. And as he postulates or puts forward in his construct, he describes mathematically antimatter by not simply putting a negative sign in front of the standard model mathematics and calling it good. He's actually come up with a whole new language of mathematical formula and symbols. So, with that said, he has also developed a new form of telescope. These use convex lenses. In other words, the surface dips down towards the center of the lens, as opposed to a Galileo version, which are convex lenses. And in the video that we have up, it also shows the graphics that we have borrowed from the Thunder Energies Corporation, and I'm sure they don't mind us giving them a plug, but it represents how this telescope is operating. Now, what they're showing in the camera are actually streaks of black, streaks of darkness, as opposed to streaks of light. And if you were to go to their website, thunderenergiescorporation.com, or thunder-energies.com, you'll see the same graphics that we used in the video. We're in a Galileo or typical telescope, you're seeing streaks of light on a photographic image. In this case, we're seeing streaks of darkness, and they could be assigned as artifact when you first look at them. But I really dug into his curriculum vitae, and this gentleman is a upstanding scientist, hundreds and hundreds of published articles in journals, several books that he has put out, I'd say at least a dozen, awards all over the place. And yet, philosophically, he is counter. He is going against the mainstream science world. And of course, that fits with his study of antimatter and sort of a, graphical representation. But philosophically, he's really trying to uncover what the mainstream science world is trying to cover up. And he has actually filed lawsuits against other scientists who have tried to, slander his name and deny him funding in the grants process. But the long and short of it is this gentleman is on his own path of research. He is not hamstrung by mainstream science. He is looking outside the box. He is changing the paradigm of what we're looking at in the universe. And he has, just late last year, actually with thorough vetting and thorough peer review, has proven that he has detected antimatter, and as he calls them, antimatter entities. And I'll stop there.
All right. So
antimatter entities.
Yeah. And folks watching on YouTube can see the video embedded running in the background. And this is what we're talking about. But you have to, folks, you got to go listen to it. Yeah, Joe, I mean, when I looked at this, antimatter entities, and you provide a description or a definition of entities.
Yeah.
And wow, I didn't realize. I mean, go ahead.
And you said that there were two type of entities that were shown by this antimatter. One of a type of light and one that is dark. Can you get into that and explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, in their photographic images, not only are they seeing dark streaks, but they're actually seeing light and dark objects that are moving on the photographic film. Now, I haven't seen any video images, but they are showing and they're publishing still images. I'm sure they're capturing video as well. But they are able to, and in some of their more scientific journal papers, they have been able to actually quantify what these entities are, how they're presenting themselves, in the sense of they are not emitting light. What they're actually doing, to varying degrees, and therefore whether they're dark or light, in varying degrees, they are annihilating matter. So as we've always heard from Star Trek, that if you bring matter and antimatter together, they destruct one another, they annihilate. Well, when that happens, there is energy released. This is very similar to a nuclear fission, not a fusion, but a fission type of reaction, where you're seeing the splitting of atoms, and then energy is released in the form of photons and gamma rays and alpha and beta rays. But anyway, the point is, they're light and dark because of the energy levels that they give off, depending on the type of annihilation and the type of material that they're encountering, causing that annihilation. But this is a whole new form of physics. The thing that is so important is that not only are we saying, hey, it appears that by definition they're seeing ghosts or spirits. I mean, that's monumental enough to say you can see spirits with a telescope. But to actually prove that there is antimatter that perhaps, now he doesn't go to that, I'm making the leap, but if he's defining it as an entity, it is possible that it's intelligent. And therefore, we step into the world of woo, in which people talk about gray matter and black goo that other folks have been talking about that is intelligent, according to the theories. We may be on the cusp of seeing antimatter defined as an intelligent goo, so to speak. That's not very technical, but that's the nomenclature that people kick around out there.
I get it.
All right, now this might sound really far out, and this is from personal experience, and I don't know how many others out there may have come across this. I call them oilies. Now, sometimes at night, I will see, it's almost like shadows flying around, but like real close to you. They can like almost like I remember one time I thought one was going to hit me. I had to move. And then people out there might think I'm hallucinating or, stayed up too many nights in a row or
That
whatever.
aside.
But this happened on more than one occasion. And I've talked to my wife and explained this to her many times, and as well as other people. And it's almost like ghosts, you would think, but you can't, there's no real definitive shape. Like I say, it's like a glob of oil flying through the sky in any sort of direction, like bats, avoiding things from hitting, avoiding themselves from hitting things. Is that kind of sound like what this possibly could be? Some type of, like you said, intelligent, and I don't even know if that would be considered antimatter. But
yeah, it sounds sort of like the Darkman stories.
Okay.
The Darkman stories is what it sounds similar to, or maybe even the Men in Black, the original Men in Black definition. But I think where we're going with the antimatter is more akin to the stories of black goo, and we've seen that represented in things like the X-Files and other movies and TV shows. And there's even of late been discussion of the gray goo. And some of that's even been related to Cern, my area of primary study, the gray goo being produced in the form of strangelets or the quark gluon condensate or the quark plasma that is produced at certain energy levels by the particle collider. So I'm beginning to see that there's some crossover in my areas of research. I think Dr. Santilli has hit upon something legitimate. Again, it's been thoroughly vetted and peer-reviewed, his research and his findings and his evidence. And one of the crossovers I'd like to step into that this video presents is the connection to the Vatican and their Lucifer telescope. And you guys are very familiar with that. You're familiar with Tom Horn and Chris Putnam and all of the work and DVDs that they've done. And I applaud those gentlemen, not stepping away from their work at all. I think this builds upon their work and their research and their revelations of what's going on at Mount Graham. But specifically to what Dr. Santilli is doing, because he's using a binocular, a dual telescope array, it's not hard to make the leap to the large binocular telescope near infrared utility with camera and integral field unit for extragalactic research. That's a mouthful. Otherwise known as Lucifer. And that's the dual telescope arrangement at the Vatican Observatory on Mount Graham in Tucson, Arizona, that Tom Horn has talked a great deal about and presented in his shows. I think there's a correlation, and this is what I think it is. I think that the Vatican, for well over 10 years, has been observing antimatter entities, the same that Dr. Santilli has been viewing in his much smaller telescopes. And thus, I think Dr. Santilli is revealing to us part of the hidden agenda that is involved with the larger program, the larger umbrella that we can throw over a lot of areas of science. And that umbrella is disclosure.
Wow. All right. With respect to the Santilli telescope, we'll just call it that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Was this telescope, I mean, the normal telescope has a different lens configuration, opposite of what this is, obviously. As you point out, this has got a an opposite lens configuration in a binocular kind of a format, if you will.
Yeah.
My first question when I saw this, and maybe others have the same question, is: was this telescope built with this intent or objective in mind to capture what it did capture, or was this just a serendipitous kind of event?
The technical aspects of the telescope were purposeful. The outcome was serendipitous. And I'll explain that because Dr. Santilli, and we have him quoted in our video, explains that initially the telescopes were intended for looking out into the cosmos, to look at distant galaxies, to actually observe galaxies and asteroids that were composed primarily of antimatter or exclusively of antimatter. In other words, these were invisible to a standard satellite or Earth-based terrestrial telescope using convex Galileo design telescopes. So he was looking for the invisible out in the cosmos. One of the nights in which they were attempting their observations in Florida, the cloud cover obscured their view, and therefore they lowered the elevation on the telescopes down to almost a near horizontal configuration, and that's when they found these images when they developed their film on their camera. And they repeated this several times, different locations, different elevations, or I should say elevations of the telescope in terms of its angle, but always at sea level. They wanted a base reference of elevation in terms of keeping the telescope at a sea pressure, a sea level elevation for atmospheric pressure, and consistent distortion that they could account for. In other words, you're looking at background images and you want to have the same environment that you're looking at from observation to observation so that you're not changing that background environment appreciably. Therefore, they could look at the new items that they were seeing by filtering out a known background from a known elevation. Anyway, with all that said, yes, they developed this purposefully to look for antimatter, and they found it.
Okay.
Now, another thing about that was in the video that you had just released was not only that when the telescope was placed, because of the cloud cover, it was placed over the cities, that these entities were working or specifically hovering over military installations?
Yeah, that's not my statement. That comes from the good doctor himself. Now, he doesn't elaborate in the particular interview that we've observed. There may be other areas in which he's elaborated this, but yeah, that does bring on the discussion of intelligent life forms. Because if they are observing us and targeting certain areas like military and scientific installations, then they are definitely doing that in a purposeful manner. This is not random. Again, everything that we're presenting has been peer reviewed. And so when they make the statement that this is observing, these entities are observing, that too has been thoroughly vetted. Well, I will say this. I believe that Dr. Santilli is being truthful and factual. He does not mention interdimensional aspects to these entities in his presentation. I think he is seeing entities that exist within our realm of existence, within our dimension. Based upon what he has presented, I will say that he is not looking at interdimensional entities. Is he looking at spiritual entities? Because he's purposefully using the word entity and defining it as an entity which is also defined as a ghost or a spirit. Now, if we want to make the leap, and I'll say this, if we can say that spirits can move from one dimension to another, that ghosts come from another dimension that we don't, with our senses, interact with on a normal, regular, daily basis, then I personally, and I'm not saying the doctor's saying this or you two guys, but I will say that it's not hard to make that leap to say that we are seeing entities coming from another dimension. Can I prove that with scientific facts, which is what I base all of my statements on, unless I say it's conjecture or it's, my own imagination. But when I present scientific information, I present it from journals and it's cross-referenced and vetted. So if I'm making my own conclusion here that he is looking at an interdimensional entity or multiple entities.
Mr. Patch.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're exactly right. What is going on here in the greater scheme of things is to obfuscate, to cover up, to deny us the truth. Now, X-Files always talk about, the truth is out there. Well, it is. And I think the powers that be, however you want to define that, will go to great lengths to try to hide the truth from us. And in the case of, if we're talking about ITEs, invisible terrestrial entities, and if we're talking about what the Vatican is doing with their telescope, I think well along for many years, the Vatican has been looking at the same invisible terrestrial entities, and I think also at things like Planet X and other incoming objects. And they well know that our planet will be struck. They know that we're being visited, that we're being monitored, and that they are covering all of this up. Part of it is to, keep us in the dark so that we don't panic, sort of a thing. But the other is to maintain control over us. And it goes back to the priesthood of not only in, the various religions of the world and theologies of the world, but the priesthood of the scientific community itself. To maintain power and control over the masses, you deny them the information, you deny them the education, you deny them the truth. So this disclosure project is formulated in such a way as to hide the truth. They are going to, and I'll cut to the chase here, as I like to do, they will in disclosure say that we are being visited and have been visited by intelligent entities who in fact are, as I describe them, the benevolent ancestors from the stars. I think that the disclosure will be that they are saying our ancestors have come here to rescue us from ourselves, to solve all of the world's problems. And we need to turn ourselves over to these ancestors, follow their lead, follow their technology, do whatever we're told, because they are benevolent. And it is quite the opposite. There is nothing benevolent about what is about to come upon this earth.
Interesting. And as well, consistent with the findings of the gentleman I referenced earlier. Okay. Wow. How long? And I know the answers to these questions, but we're getting so many actual email questions right now. A lot of people hearing this information, believe it or not, for the first time. How long has this telescope existed? The one that you're referencing here in the video, the Santilli telescope. How long has that been around? How long has that been operational?
Well, it's new to me. And so I cannot say definitively how long it's been around. It appears to be a recent, let's call it invention, development. I think that Dr. Santilli has been researching along these lines for as long as 50 years, according to what I found in his curriculum vitae. The telescope itself, I have not actually looked to see how long it's been in development and in its final form. So I would guess it's probably been 5 years, just to put a guess to it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Because, as I said, a lot of people are tuning into this broadcast tonight saying, wait a minute, I've never heard of this. Why haven't we heard of this? Both the the telescope and also the findings. When were these images taken, or equally important, I suppose,
Mhm.
how long have they been out there? How long has this information been out there? Um,
Well, the initial announcement as to the final vetting and peer review process, the final outcome of that process was around September of last year that these findings were released. Now, obviously, the vetting process, the peer review takes much longer than that. So I think that we're looking at a process of at least 2 years that the information has been in the possession of the doctor and finally has been released to the general public. But, it's been a controlled release, and there's not a lot of information out there other than just really the surface material that we're presenting right here today.
Okay. Kind of switching gears here. We have a question from an emailer. This is from Shauna, and she says, "Hi, H&H family. I would love to know if CERN in any way could be used to cover up Planet X or 7X in any way."
or Nibiru or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it can be covered up. I think I've received the question many times, is it perhaps going to be used as a weapon to change the trajectory, the direction of travel of Planet X as it's coming in? That perhaps this is all a wonderful tool to be used to save our planet from an incoming one. I don't believe that, and I don't believe that it's going to physically be able to cover up or through technology hide this incoming planet. I do believe it is coming in the near infrared spectrum. It is coming up from the southern equatorial region of the planet, and it is being observed by the Vatican. It is being observed by their Lucifer instruments, and that is the purpose of that Lucifer telescope, is to track this incoming planet. I don't see any indications that CERN as a project is being used to um, divert our attention away from this incoming planet as a cover-up program, so to speak, or that the technology itself can be used to visually or with any other spectrum, spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, cover up the fact that it exists. So no, to answer the question, there's no application of CERN to covering up the incoming planet. Yeah, we are being prepared. Many people, not only myself and the two of you, have talked about at length, but for the benefit of those that may not have heard this subject before, predictive programming, if you will, mind control of the masses, has been going on through Hollywood and mainstream media for many, many years. And it started back in the 50s with the old sci-fi, the B movie, flying saucers and aliens and all of that. This has been going on since the early 50s to get us ready for this false revelation that's coming, the grand deception. The grand deception is, as I said, that we are in the theory of panspermia, or the theory that we are descendants from an advanced race of aliens that perhaps look just like us, perhaps have the same DNA. But the point is that there is a race somewhere out there in the cosmos that started our life form, that started the human race. And they're coming back to visit us. They're coming back to visit us because they're concerned that we're going to destroy ourselves. And so they're going to save us. The deception is that this is the original lie coming from the Garden of Eden. The original lie specifically was that if you partake of the tree of knowledge, you shall be as gods, that you will achieve immortality. This folds into discussions that I've had with you guys about DNA, transhumanism. Tom Horn's, gone into great depth about that, and I applaud him for that. The point here is that the deception is that you will be as gods if you follow what these ancestors from the stars will guide us to and tell us. And in fact, that we have been in communication with these ancestors before their arrival. And that communication has provided us with all of these advancements in technology that we're seeing today, such as the Large Hadron Collider, changes in DNA research, GMO foods, genetic modification, as well as creating new life forms, biological life forms from scratch, from the building block amino acids. And there's a whole nother discussion right there that I've gone into many, many times. But the point here is that we are going to be fooled. They're going to try to fool us into believing that whoever these ancestors are that will manifest, and we'll get into how they will be manifest, how they'll present themselves, but they're going to try to fool us into believing that we have to follow whatever we're being told by these benevolent ancestors. And these are not benevolent, as I said. These are demonic entities. These are purely from hell. This is Satan's agenda. This is Satan's plan. Satan is behind all of this, including Cern. When we talk about the occult, when we talk about the halftime ceremonies and the occult rituals that take place there, this is all coming from Satan. This is the year of light until September of this year. This is Lucifer's year. Lucifer's year is the year of deception. And I better stop there and let you jump in.
Lucifer's year. When you say this is the year, do you mean literally 2016 is the year, or are you just talking about a time period era that we're in?
Yeah, I dislike it when people profess to know a date or a time or a year.
Right.
And I will not step into that either. And I know what you're saying, but I'm just reflecting the fact that they call this the year of light. And we know that Lucifer,
Okay.
he is the light and the Illuminati. Is disclosure going to happen this year? I don't know, but it sure looks like there's a coalescing of events, mainstream media, programming, science, revelations in science that are coming out. I mean, I'm being flooded with revelations in science that are being revealed now that have been hidden for 50 plus years. Even in the X-Files, they said this has been hidden for 70 years. Well, there's been a lot of technology that's been hidden that right now is flooding into the mainstream media. It's being revealed this year. A lot is coalescing this year. And is the grand disclosure, are the aliens, so to speak, going to show up this year? I won't be pinned down to say that, but it just might happen that way. Who knows?
Look at the evidence, I guess, is what you're saying, and I love your approach to this because I think this is how we have to approach everything, with sobriety, with intellectual reason. We are not in control of the schedule of the those members of the secret society and the powers that control everything, nor are we in control of the timing of prophetic events, the Bible prophecy. God's in charge of that. The people on the dark side are in charge of their schedule. So I like this. I mean, you're presenting the facts as you see them in your investigative findings as you develop them. So this is all good. This is great. All right.
Mr. Patch, we have another question from a listener. This is from Rob. And this is unfamiliar to me. I have not heard of this. They're asking if Anthony has any information on the CEPC, or Circular Electron Positron Collider, 7 times stronger than CERN.
Yeah, that's
positron. 17 miles around, producing millions of Higgs instead of LHC hundreds of Higgs.
Yeah.
Are they referring to the project that's slated to break ground in China?
I'm not sure.
Is he? Maybe you can email him back, but I think he's talking about the large project that is about to break ground in China that will be about 20 times more powerful, if we're talking about tera electron volts and peta electron volts, more power than the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. Now, the purpose of that machine we can talk about, but yes, there is another project slated. It's kind of like the super collider that was slated to be built in the United States in Texas, which was, they broke ground, they built some tunnels, they didn't really do anything, they shut it all down, they cut the funding. This is the advancement of that. This follows in the pattern of what started with Dr. Lawrence at UC Berkeley, my alma mater, and started with the Bevatron, cyclotron, synchrotron, now the Large Hadron Collider. It's always bigger and bigger and bigger, more powerful machines. But I don't think that project is going to see the light of day. And I'm going to give you a new piece of information here today. I think they're done. I think they're finished. I don't believe even the advanced projects of changing over to niobium niobium tin magnets, which will increase the power of the existing LHC. I don't believe they're even going to go there. I think that they are done. I think that they have achieved what they set out to achieve. All the rest of it that's on the drawing boards is nothing more than jobs programs. It's nothing more than the continual movement of the military industrial complex, its own inertia. It can't get out of its own way. It continues with funding and projects and industry that's so tied into all of these projects, building all of the machinery, the detectors, etc. But I really believe that the LHC at Cern has achieved what they wanted to achieve, and they're done. Well, I think that it's important that people understand that we're not fear-mongering. And I appreciate the fact that you have a broad scope of guests that you bring on board your program, your investigative reports. And so you have the ability to lend that bigger perspective, that higher view than I do, because I really am so entrenched in looking at physics and DNA and those areas of research that I don't see the popular culture as much as you guys do. And you have the benefit of scientific information from other disciplines coming at you, from Stan Deyo, from the Tom Horns, etc. So feel free, please, to add in what you're seeing that is coming down the funnel of information. And tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm misguided. Tell me if I'm jumping the gun in thinking that there is a lot coming together this year that perhaps is reaching a critical mass. Sorry for the pun, but reaching a critical mass here this year. And again, I don't want to be pinned down to just this year. There's a possibility that something, on the Day of Atonement, so to speak, in September of next year may come to pass. There's been a lot of discussion about that. But again, we're not here to cause fear. These are frightening things. It's frightening just to look at the Large Hadron Collider itself, the scale of that thing and what it does and the power that it produces. But, Jesus Christ is in control here. God's in control. This is his plan. He's allowing these things to take place in due course, according to his timeline. And whatever that timeline is, we're not privy to, but we can see the hints. And that's what we're doing here, is providing hints. We're uncovering things that have been hidden away, not to produce fear, but this is a call to Jesus Christ, quite frankly. This is like, okay, if you want something to look at that's physical, that represents evil, take a look at CERN. Look at that machine and tell me that that's not there for evil purposes. They even talk about wanting to open an interdimensional doorway, a portal into other dimensions, and to communicate with entities on the other side. This comes out of CERN's own public relations office. This doesn't come out of, my imagination. But that's where people have to stop and say, okay, if what you guys are saying is real and tangible and physical evidence and facts, then I guess maybe it's time that I stop and assess what I'm doing in my life and decide whether I'm going to go with Jesus Christ or if I'm going to go with Satan, because there's no gray area. And quite honestly, there's very little time left. How much, I don't know. But it's obvious that we're coming to a critical point in the history of the human race. And people have got to get with the program, and they've got to get with Jesus Christ. And I'll get off my podium here for a moment. If we think of the encounter of the disciples in the fishing boat, and they see Jesus Christ walking on water, that essentially is Jesus Christ as a wave, and I don't mean a water wave, but an energy wave, a spirit, a ghost, if you will, moving across the top of the water. And then when he comes to the boat itself and manifests himself in physical form as a solid being, he's now a particle. So it's biblical. The Bible is replete with advanced science.
Mm-hmm.
God laid out the plan in the Bible. And if scientists throughout the years had paid more attention, including Newton, Galileo, and others like him, had spent more time in the Bible, they would have had even more discoveries. Now, Newton was a reader of the Bible. He was a follower, a believer. And he did come to many of his conclusions based upon what he found in the scriptures. But mainstream science today would benefit from reading the Bible.
I would agree with you 100%, because they are not mutually exclusive. Actually, just what you just said, the Bible, if anything, proves and can prove, the science that we see today in many ways, and it will also disprove much of the science we see as well. But the Bible would be the foundation for any young person wanting to go into science who is a believer, because it will be your best method of understanding what is real and what is false, because we do have a false science out there that is being used to create these deceptions leading up to the great deceptions. And there is sound science out there, but that is swept under the rug and hush hush on that.
Now, the Bible is a good roadmap. It can lead you to your more definitive, more focused areas of study in science, but it is the starting point. It is also the point that will give you enlightenment. It will flip on that light bulb of enlightenment, and you go, oh, okay, now I understand what it is that God's trying to show me, that science is also trying to show me. But I like to say that, prayers with Jesus Christ is quantum entanglement of our particles with him. So I'll back that up a little bit. If we accept the premise that Jesus Christ, when he manifests in physical form with us, that he's a particle, then in hard science, in quantum mechanics, we talk about quantum entanglement. And that means the communication of two particles separated by any distance, near or far. If you observe one particle at a distance, another particle that is communicating with the particle that you're observing will also be affected in the same manner as the one that's right in front of you. Now, Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. Today, we call it quantum entanglement. It means that there is, at the quantum level, an instantaneous, faster than the speed of light, an instantaneous form of communication between particles. So when we pray with Jesus Christ, our particles are entangled with his particles. If we're praying with Jesus Christ in physical form, we're quantum entangled. If he is a wave, an energy form, we are also quantum entangled with him. Because in hard science, in physics, in quantum mechanics, we talk about duality. Duality simply means that a particle can be an energy wave and an energy wave can be a particle. It depends upon the observer. And we as the human beings are the observers. So the state of that matter, whether it's spiritual in the form of a wave or a particle in the form of a physical person that we're praying with or praying to, we are communicating through quantum entanglement. So physics can describe what is going on in the Bible, and the Bible can explain what is going on in quantum physics.
Fascinating.
You know, Joe, and guys out there, guys who think you're too cool for school, or you're too the Bible is antiquated, for example. And I used to think this. I mean, right up to 5 years ago.
What a manly man can't.
You know, no, it's irrelevant to today. I used to look at the Bible as more of a historical book. It's not that I didn't believe in it. I just looked at it as ancient history. But when you look at it the way Mr. Patch just explained this to me, when you look at it as a real enlightenment, I mean, the authoritative foundation for physics and science and yeah, history certainly, but it's rife with physics. It's rife with the science, this interdimensionality, if you will, and to some extent time travel. It's just an amazing book when you look at it that way. So I just want to make a mention to the guys out there. Don't think, for example, that the Bible is antiquated. It's really not, and it's really interesting. That's just my public service announcement there, if you will. Now,
well, let me give you just a real quick example of something totally bizarre. We talk about quantum computers. There's a thing called quantum tunneling. Quantum tunneling in the Bible, okay? John 20:26. Jesus proved that it was possible to appear in a completely closed off room to his apostles. In other words, he moved right through the walls. He moved right through the door. And he appeared in front of the apostles. That is quantum tunneling, the ability of particles to move through energy barriers, even though it appears to be impossible, according to our classical laws of mechanical physics.
there you go.
Now, a quantum computer uses quantum tunneling to run its programming, to derive its answers from another dimension. You've had me on talking about the adiabatic quantum computer, an interdimensional quantum computer. That's quantum tunneling. Well, Jesus Christ did the same thing, and he did it with his own body.
And there you have it. There you have it, folks. We have a question, and I think it's a good question. It's a good foundational question as well. This from Sandy H., who writes that she has a problem with our email, but it came through fine this time. Sandy writes this, or wants to ask you this. Could these things being seen, and this references the antimatter, the telescope artifacts, or not artifacts, but what was seen.
Perhaps antimatter entities, yes.
Okay, antimatter entities. Could they have to do with the government, such as chemtrails and HARP and other weaponry? I mean, is it possible that chemtrails and HARP and these are all working together to facilitate what we're seeing?
That's a very good question. And to back up for people who don't have the background on what chemtrails and aerosolized spraying and Project Bluebeam is all about, the short answer is I don't think that these entities that are being observed and captured on film have anything to do with Project Bluebeam or the aerosolized spraying of the atmosphere, the so-called chemtrails. I think that this is being observed beyond the atmosphere and therefore is not part of Project Bluebeam itself. Project Bluebeam will be used in the Grand Deception specifically the spraying of the atmosphere, has multiple agendas. One of them is to use the aluminum that has been sprayed along with the strontium and the barium to create a reflective surface, much like a theater screen, that will allow for the um, photorealistic projection of images throughout the world. And these will be images of Jesus, Buddha, Shiva, whomever around the planet, and also these benevolent ancestors from the stars, be they in, flying saucers, so to speak, UFOs, spacecraft, and their images of themselves will be projected as holograms. And that dovetails into what we were talking about as far as Lady Gaga, the Super Bowl, the Intel ad for the Grammys, and her being projected in a cube as a hologram. And we can get into that in a minute. But to stay with the question, the antimatter that is being observed is not necessarily being observed in our atmosphere. Some of them are, of course, because they exist everywhere around us, according to Dr. Santilli, but they are also being observed outside our atmosphere and therefore are not part of the chemtrail process or agenda.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Very good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, the Beyonce, the Super Bowl, the Grammys, and Lady Gaga. I did not see. The only thing I saw of any of these was the Super Bowl video of Beyonce JD put together. What? So you said at the Grammys, Lady Gaga was presented as a holograph,
Or hologram.
a hologram in a cube.
Yeah, we put out a video just before the one that you're talking about, in which we break down this whole Intel commercial for the Grammys. And she is sponsored by Intel, and she makes several statements in there that are rather ominous. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but this is pretty close to it. She says, "I have the power to imagine the unimaginable. I have the power to invent the uninventable." Now, if you really think about the implications of that in terms of technology that she has at her fingertips, thanks to Intel, and I'm sure there are others besides Intel that are involved, she is talking about the revealing of the high technology that has been hidden for all these years that we've talked about, and that they are about to reveal to us. Specifically in this case, Jade, let me back up a little bit. JD and I had a little bit of fun, and we kind of, imagined that I had this dream of Lady Gaga appearing at the Super Bowl as a holographic image that was indistinguishable from that of a human standing, perhaps Beyonce or someone standing next to her. To the crowd and to the television viewers, the dream was that she would appear to be like a normal human being. And then all of a sudden, at the end of her performance, she would ascend to the heavens. That's Project Bluebeam. Now, that didn't happen. We had a little fun with it. We got some, tongue in cheek with it. But there's nothing to say that that might happen at the Grammys, because she is presented as a holographic image in this commercial. But you can tell she's a hologram. It's translucent. It's kind of jittery and jumpy. It's what we would normally consider to be a holographic representation of a person. But the advanced technology is such, and this is where Project Bluebeam is that they will be presenting images, perhaps her at the Grammys, in such a fashion that you won't know whether she's real or if she's a hologram.
And we've seen that in past musical performances. One that comes to mind was a summer rap festival. I think this was the first of its time that a hologram of Tupac Shakur, the dead rapper, was projected in 2014, I believe, at a summer music concert, and appearing as though he was on stage singing like he would be in real life. And if I'm sure if people weren't, if it wasn't announced that this was a hologram, uh, you know, it wouldn't be too hard to tell, but it would have taken many people by surprise, I think. And
Hmm.
that's what they have shown us, and that's what they have allowed the public to be given. Now, what capabilities beyond that they have that can project holograms and these images and how real they look in their reality as their technology is so far much more advanced than what they show us. I wonder, and what you mentioned about the projection of Jesus being projected across the world, or Buddha, or depending on the religion and the region, is that what you believe we've seen with what is it, the visions of the Fatima,
Fatima.
the Fatima?
Yeah, Fatima.
And I think there were children in Mexico who
And
saw
the
the Virgin Mary in the sky, and
Bay the Bay Harbor, I whatever that was on Long Island. Yeah, could it be?
we've seen videos recently where other people have reported the same type of scenarios. It always seems to be in third world countries, in places that are not, they're more. It's more tribal than it is
Except
inner
for
city.
yeah, except for the one on Long Island. But that was I don't know.
Yeah, there was a video that they say Jesus was in the sky, and
Hmm.
to a few thousand people in somewhere in South Africa or in Africa, and we've been seeing more and more of these, and this is what you're referring to as the
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
and that's, I mean, just imagine,
The,
folks,
the,
standing
the
there.
lying wonders. When she talks about imagining the unimaginable and inventing the uninventable, does it not say in Scripture, lying wonders? Does it not say in Scriptures that God will allow every evil to be manifest, that every imagining of man will be allowed?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
What I believe that we're talking about here is compliments of Mr. Patch. Folks, go to anthonypatch.com. Compliments of Mr. Patch through his work. We are getting insight into the back room. This is where all the projectors are, the technical equipment is. It's behind the curtain, behind the veil. This is where all the machinations are not just planned out, but they're choreographed through this modern technology that you and I really don't know anything about. And we're getting insight into the deception, not for any other I mean, for the primary reason of being able to identify when we're getting hosed, folks. I
Yep.
mean, we got to know. It would the more I see this, the more I realize, and then you can comment on this, but the more I realize that we are going to be what we're about to see, or we're about to experience, the world that is, I truly believe, will convince even the most skeptic among us that, hey, that's our savior up there. This is real. I mean, that's what I believe. Um, it's going to be that
Yep.
compelling.
It will be. And there's technology out there to back that up beyond just the images. But I wanted to mention real quickly before I go down that rabbit hole, in the video that we're talking about, Lady Gaga also talks about the wizard. You mentioned, you're getting a chance to see behind the scenes and see, you know, behind the projectors here. She is saying that we are going to reveal what's behind the curtain, and you will get to see the wizard behind the curtain. Obviously, a reference to the Wizard of Oz, but the wizard is Satan. She is talking about revealing Satan in all his glory as they imagine him, and all of his technology. That they're telling us in this video, we're going to show you all of the lying wonders. They're going to manifest as incredible inventions, incredible imaginings that you have no idea about, but we're going to show you. We're going to show you everything that we've had hidden for the last 50 or 70 years that you have no idea. There's a part in Scripture that talks about men's hearts will fail at what they behold,
Mm-hmm.
this is, and that's more to the opening of the abyss and, the locust army and all of that. But still, this all fits in together. Again, I'm not trying to scare people, but I'm trying to lay out that they are telling us to our face what they're going to do, and they do it through the commercials. So whatever they have planned for the Grammys, because she says they have a secret project, she and Intel, that they are going to reveal at the Grammys. Now, it could just be some great computer system or whatever, but I'm imagining that it's going to be her indistinguishable from a real human being.
Wow.
And those people who are not aware of what show, I mean, imagine not being aware of this, just being so clueless. You're walking around out there, and the deception is much easier to those who are uninformed. We are going to have our work cut out for us at that moment to get people to understand this is all just a big lie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So well done.
Mr. Patch, what's the significance of the cube?
Saturn.
Okay.
The cube is a false representation of reality. The cube is supposed to be, in Euclidean mathematics and geometry, it is supposed to represent all four senses and all four directions of measurement, including time, fourth being time. However, the real representation of the universe, they want us to believe in the cube. The occult, those that practice in the sacred geometries, they believe in the cube. But the real model of the universe, and this is what I put out, and you'll see it there on my website, images of a sphere that's comprised of triangles, more specifically tetrahedrons. What they're trying to present to us, and I'm throwing a lot at you at once here, but they're trying to show us that what we believe in is that the universe is made up of cubes, and that everything that we know in our senses is related to what we can measure in that cube, in that four-way representation of our existence, our realm, our universe. But the cube also has to do with the core of Saturn, the occult worship, the black sun, the golden age of Kronos. They believe that their leadership, their fallen angel leadership, is trapped within a cube, within the core of Saturn. And it is their goal to release those entities, have them merge with the entities that are trapped within the Earth, within the abyss of the Earth. And they will use Cern to connect Saturn to the Earth and use a plasma conduit of Birkeland currents that will connect Saturn and the Earth, thus recreating the existence or the the atmosphere, so to speak, that existed in their belief of the golden age of Kronos, when the Earth and Saturn were joined within a plasma envelope. They cannot reconnect physically in close proximity the two planets, but they can use technology. They can use CERN to reconnect Saturn to Earth. They can also reignite a plasma envelope around Saturn, which is the same thing that occurred during the Golden Age, and a plasma envelope around the Earth. And they will connect those two plasma envelopes using a plasma conduit of Birkeland currents generated by the Large Hadron Collider, which also opens the portal at the same time as this conduit is created. And the conduit will be used to bring those entities out of the cube within Saturn to the Earth, and they will have their golden age. In other words, their version of the Garden of Eden.
Mr. Patch, you just kind of blew me away here, because it was in 2013. I had a conversation with a gentleman who was detached but working for the United States government. As a matter of fact, NASA, we'll just say NASA, which really is not true, but it had associations with NASA. and we were talking. I had asked a question about, um, well, the conversation went into astrology, okay, only because he had made a statement. And if you can expand upon what you just said, because I believe what you just said is key to something. I don't know what it is, but it's something. Because I was told, and this is the first time I've ever said this on air, by this government contact, and I've not talked to him since. He said, obviously, and the conversation was paraphrased by the powers here on walking on Earth, are transfixed with astrology and numerology and sacred geometry. But he told me, he said, "You've got no idea what you're talking about," and I didn't. You have no idea what the importance of Saturn is to these people. And that was the first time and only time I've ever heard Saturn referenced in this context.
And Standeo said something about at one time the Earth being joined with Saturn in a way, and that being taken away. And I do not remember all the specifics of that conversation except for that detail.
There was brief discussion of unfinished rings or something about the rings as well. What are we talking about here? Can you help me out? Because this, again, I have not said this publicly because I didn't know what to say. I've never really, Saturn? I mean, help me.
Yeah, it does sound totally bizarre. And again, this is not my belief, and I know it doesn't reflect your beliefs for either of you gentlemen. But if people are familiar with the worship of the black sun, if we go to the Nazis, if you will, the Vril, all of these societies, if you want to talk about any of the leaders in the occult societies, you go right down through the whole list. And you can go back to Egypt. You can go back to the Sumerian writings. All of this revolves around Saturn. We see this in corporate America, in the logos of corporate America, and not even corporate America, around the planet. Saturn is revered. It goes back to what I mentioned as their belief in a time when, before Saturn and even the Earth were part of what we now consider our known solar system, Saturn and the Earth traveled together, enveloped in a single plasma envelope, a highly charged electrical environment in which human beings lived on the Earth. And there was no sun, there was no night. It was always daylight. And the daylight was provided by Saturn. Saturn was the sun of the Golden Age. And the story goes that Saturn and the Earth moved into what we now call our solar system. And then the two planets were separated. And I can give you more details, but I'm keeping it short. It's the separation that has caused all of the problems with our planet, according to these believers. And it is their goal to solve the world's problems by bringing back that connection that existed between Saturn and the Earth back in what they call the Golden Age of Kronos, and Kronos is Saturn.
So thank you for that explanation. It's a very good, concise explanation. The information that I did research, I mean, there's a lot of it out there, but that is concise indeed. Let me ask a follow-up, one follow-up question. I'm going to turn this to you. The recent planetary alignment that occurred, well, not recent, but the Sunday, the planetary alignment, the 5 planets, beginning, I think, with, what was it, Mercury,
Mars, Venus,
the 5 planets, yeah,
Jupiter, Saturn, and Earth.
Yeah. What significance? And I was told that this holds an extreme significance, as if it's like a marker in time, like a bookmark in time.
Mm-hmm.
And especially given the rituals at the Super Bowl. You know, some believe the rituals that we saw are merely nothing more than Black Panther, Black Power, limited to that. But others, like myself, believe that there was a much deeper esoteric message timed with the planetary alignment. can you explain the significance of that planetary alignment that we saw on Sunday?
Well, not being a practitioner of the occult nor of astrology, it's difficult for me to give a definitive, in-depth answer, but I'll give you a very superficial conjecture on my part, and that is that there's another planetary alignment of the same planets coming up on May 7th. There are two alignments. One takes place in terms of the closest planet and then the furthest away planet. And then there is an alignment that takes place in terms of the names of the planets. And both of these two types of alignments have occult significance. I don't know what they are. The conclusion that I come to is that it's a releasing of spiritual entities and it is a gaining of further power. The purpose of the rituals, such as the Super Bowl, is to gain additional spiritual power. Apart from the other side, if you will, from the demonic realm, but spiritual power from those that are in the stadium, as well as those that are watching on TV. The television is a portal. This is all about gaining spiritual energy through the rituals. The other is the alignment of the planets, as I understand it, enhances that. It enhances that spiritual reinforcement of that energy. It heightens the power, if you will. But if we go back to the Intel commercial for the Grammys with Gaga, there's an aircraft hangar, more specifically a dirigible or lighter than air or blimp hangar. There are three of them. This one is at Moffett Field, and I know this area very well. I grew up in the area. Moffett Field is right across, it's a stone's throw from Levi Stadium where the football game was played, where the Super Bowl was played. They filmed the video in that hangar. And when the doors at the beginning are opened, you'll see door number 5 on the left and number 6 on the right. They don't put numbers out there randomly. I believe that they're saying May 6th, which lines up with this May 7th alignment of the planets that's coming up. What's going to happen? I don't know. It could just be another ceremony to gain additional power. But I think that the Super Bowl was serving, and this commercial was serving to say, this is a warm-up exercise for something bigger that's coming. And it may be, I don't know, there may be something big that's going to happen on the next alignment of May 7th.
Very interesting, Mr. Patch. Back to the black sun that you referenced. We did a few shows on the cover and content of the magazine The Economist and the symbolism that they put in their magazine, especially on the cover and in the poster inside. Excuse me. And in there is a picture. There's a whole lot of things going on. One of the things that is going on is the sun is blackened. Do you see any correlation or significance with what you just explained to the cover of The Economist?
Was it the sun or was it the moon? I mean,
I think it was the sun.
Because, okay, yeah, that's a 2015. Is that the 2016, Eric, that you put up there? Or that's 2016? Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to get out.
And then on the right-hand side there is the blacked out sun. On the left-hand side looks like the moon, but it has a sign that says Jupiter, it points away.
Yeah, Jupiter is a daughter planet to Saturn. The theory is that it was birthed due to a cataclysm, a cataclysmic event, perhaps another body that impacted Saturn. But it's a daughter planet, and so the two are still connected. Their goal is ultimately, if they can do it, if they can achieve this, their goal is to electrically reconnect all of the planets. Now, the black sun, if that's the sun, I haven't looked at that in a while, but if it's the sun rather than the moon, then that fits to Saturn exactly. And Saturn needs to be reconnected in their minds to Jupiter.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Folks, you see how all of this is coming together, how Mr. Patch is connecting the dots, and we're doing so. um, with reasoned speculation and investigation, research. This is not just a bunch of stuff just thrown out there. I mean, this is looking at it from a number of different perspectives, including the perspective of the powers, the sick Luciferian powers out there that want to subjugate us. Very interesting, indeed.
Mr. Patcher, we could get back to CERN. We have a question from Deborah M., who asks this: if you could define what CERN wanted to find, what they are doing with it, and how we will find out.
Well, the major agenda, as I said, is to open a portal, as they admit, and to communicate with the other side, and to have the other side communicate and actually pass entities into our realm of existence through that portal. I call it the freeway. There are lots of portals around the planet, and there are many people who individually can communicate with the other side. But this is what I call the freeway. This is opening up the big portal that'll be stable. It'll be opened and maintained by the adiabatic quantum computer. Again, as I said, is an interdimensional computer. And they are going to let everybody come through this time. The short answer here is that CERN not only is trying to achieve a portal, it has multiple agendas and applications, but they say that they were trying to find the God particle, the so-called Higgs boson. This is all a cover story. None of this has any application to their reality. This is for public consumption. This is to justify funding. These are jobs programs. This is the military-industrial complex gone completely off the deep end in terms of jobs, money, all of that. But the point here with the technology is that they say they're trying to find, particles that existed at the time of the initiation of the Big Bang. That's for public consumption. They're not only trying to create a portal, but they are trying to create the most powerful explosive in the known universe, which are strangelets, the quark-gluon condensate that I spoke of earlier. This is a weapon. The purpose of the weapon is to breach the fabric of space, which is a plasma. It has nothing to do with dark matter and dark energy. They know that the universe is electric. It's an electric plasma. They need to reach down at the quantum level to the strong force. It sounds like Star Trek, but there's a strong nuclear bond that exists at the quantum level between quantum particles. And they need to have enough power to break that nuclear bond. We're not talking about splitting atoms like a nuclear bomb going off. We're talking about using quark-gluon condensate, which predates, in the timeline of the Big Bang, predates the Higgs boson. So it is not the Higgs boson that is the original first particle. The first particle are quark-gluon condensates known as strangelets, and those I call the Lucifer or the Satan particle. That's my own name. I call it the Satan particle because they want to use it as a weapon to break through to another dimension. The other characteristic of strangelets is that it has the potential of converting this planet into a neutron star. A neutron star is comprised of strangelets, which attract other matter to them, condense it, much like the gravity of a theoretical black hole. If you imagine that scenario, attracting matter to itself, that's how a neutron star is created, are strangelets. Strangelets have been produced by the Relativistic Heavy Ion Collider at Brookhaven Laboratory in April of 2014. They also created them at the Large Hadron Collider. Anything above 10 teraelectron volts produces strangelets. They have been doing that all last year. They have plenty of material now. That's why I think that they're done. I don't see that they need to utilize the particle collider for anything more than just opening the portal. And they have the weapons that they need, not only to open the portal, but they have the powerful weapon to use against God. Their agenda is to kill God's army in the final battle and to kill God himself. This
Mm-hmm.
is the hubris of Satan. Satan truly believes that he can kill God, and they are producing the weapons for that battle.
You know, I was going to say the exact same thing. Okay, I was going to offer the same explanation. All right, but you beat me to it. Yeah, Ken, or I'm sorry, Ron had sent an email, and I think you just answered this, if I understand this correctly. It's the question relates to understanding how CERN is subdividing particles of, well, how they make the jump from that to revealing other dimensions. But I think you just answered that. I'm gonna have to listen to it like 4 or 5 times, but
Mm-hmm.
you just answered that, didn't you?
They're going to blow a hole in the fabric of space.
Right. Right. Okay.
Wow.
Again, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I think tonight is one of the most important broadcasts you can listen to. Please tell your family, friends about this, and also listen to this over and over again, because I don't think, I mean, just to make sure you get all the information from this, and certainly bookmark anthonypatch.com and support his work and pass the word, because this is extremely, I mean, critical information.
Yeah. If I could, Mr. Patch, I want to ask you to speculate for a second. In Revelation, we're told about a time in heaven where there's silence for 30 minutes. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any theories or thoughts on to why or what causes that silence? And if so, is that related to what we're talking about tonight?
Well, I hope I don't step into the realm of being accused of being a heretic. So, you know,
Okay.
I'm not a scholar. I'm not a scholar. So if I'm out of line, I apologize up front. Yeah, speculation on my part. I think it is sort of the angels holding their breath. I think it's the preparation for war. I think the angels realize what's coming and they don't really want to do it. They don't want to get into this battle and they know how bad it's going to be. But this is a spiritual battle. You mentioned, Joe, you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you cannot separate the spiritual from the physical. I have said the same thing many times. This is a spiritual battle, but it has a physical manifestation. And we know that that's a battle between angels on both sides in both camps. And we know that it's also a battle between men and themselves, brother against brother. I think the 30 minutes is where the angels are kind of going, okay, we're going in. We're going into the front lines. And everybody's going to jump in because this is a spiritual battle. We talk about putting on the full armor of God in a spiritual sense, but I'm not trying to scare people, but boy, there is no way getting around it. We are going to war, and it's coming fast.
Well, that's just fascinating. What you just said, the half hour in silence, the half hour of silence in heaven being that the angels are holding their breath, because we do know, as you said, that not only will Satan attempt to kill God and to overthrow heaven for himself, um, but we know that he will fail in his attempt. And the angels that are in heaven, it talks in the Bible extensively how around the throne of God are angels who worship him constantly and sing his praises, and all the different functions from the cherubim to and what they do, and how the hierarchy of heaven is basically centered around God and the worship of God. And that's what ceases in heaven for the half hour of silence. All that worship and praise is stopped, and I've never heard it explained in the way that you've explained it, nor even thought about it myself as to why it would be silent in heaven for a half hour. And I'm going to continue to look into that, keeping your speculative point of view very much in the forefront when I do.
Let me know what you find.
Absolutely.
Uh, scalar technology, scalar waves.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Tesla.
Tesla, right? Uh, Ted Rohrer talked about this on our program before, and one of our listeners had asked for your comments. Let me see if I can find it here. Man, I'm not even sure I could read the question. I'm not sure I understand the question, but the um, talk about being out of your element. The scalar waves that created are created during our prayer connection to the Lord.
Hmm.
Are they in number? I guess, or could it be said that scalar waves are created via our prayer connection?
Like energy being created?
Not
Mm-hmm.
was that the right even? Can you create
Well,
energy? I mean, in that fashion. Go ahead. But
yeah, energy already exists. The conservation of energy, the conservation of mass is well understood in physics. But if we're relating to what I said about quantum entanglement and particles being able to communicate across vast distances instantaneously, and that is a representation of prayer between us and God or us and Jesus Christ as our intercessor, then you can also say, if we're talking about quantum entanglement of particles, we also have to talk about in the theory of wave particle duality, in which a particle can be a wave and a wave can be a particle simultaneously at the same moment. They can have both forms. Then, if we go from particle quantum entanglement, we're also talking about wave entanglement, communication in a wave form or a form of energy, a frequency, a wave that has a specific frequency, would also represent that quantum entanglement, because you can have entanglement of particles, but you can also have entanglement of waves. So our energy is connecting with Jesus's energy, just like our particles are connecting with the particles of Jesus. They're doing it at the same time, same process, same manner. We just describe it in terms of quantum mechanics, but in the Bible, they talk about it in terms of prayer.
I just realized I should have paid a heck of a lot more attention to Physics 101 as we're talking about this. Yeah. All right. Because the question here by Nicolette also referenced quantum entanglement that occurs when we actively put on the full armor of God daily, which I think by your answer kind of I get the connection here. Okay. Wow.
The full armor of God in a physics standpoint is that the energy that is given to us by the Holy Spirit is a wave. That's a wave form of energy. And the full armor of God is a spiritual wave form of energy that surrounds us. It doesn't necessarily have to manifest as a physical particle, but it does exist as a wave that the Holy Spirit becomes enveloped around our body as a shield of protection, an energy shield. Star Trek, put up the shields up, Scotty. This is real in the world of quantum physics. There is an energy field that surrounds every particle. There's no reason to say that it doesn't happen with us as a physical life form, that the full armor of God provided to us through the Holy Spirit, which is a wave form of energy, protects us from head to toe from the spiritual onslaught that comes from Satan and his minions, which are also wave forms of energy. Yeah, that's a big question. That's a big question. I think that in the short answer, CERN fits into the prophecy in terms of the opening of the abyss. Um, the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, you may have heard, is situated over what is considered to be the doorway to the abyss, the gateway, and that CERN, more specifically the machine, the LHC, is the actual key to opening this doorway to another dimension, in other words, into the abyss. It is physically located at the site of an ancient Roman temple for the worship of Apollyon. So they don't do this by accident. It is also the nexus, the conjoining of ley lines, magnetic lines of force, the ley lines around the planet. So it's gathering energy from the planet along with the energy that it derives from the collisions. And the turning of the key is the colliding of the particles and the use of the strangelets that I spoke of before. So this fits right into the book of Revelation, Revelation 9:12, I believe it is.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Okay. Another question from a listener. Did the Nazis succeed in opening portals similar to what CERN's
You had
trying to
mentioned
do?
the virulent Nazis earlier on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um, the Nazi bell, many people have heard of Die Glocke, or I can't, pronounce it properly, but the Nazi bell utilized a very primitive form of the same technology that's being used at the Large Hadron Collider. Now, specifically the physics. The Nazi Bell Project was for the purpose of not only opening a gateway, a portal to communicate with entities, but also for the distortion of time. They were trying to manipulate or distort the timeline, to alter the timeline. That was their belief. So the physics involved was red mercury. Red mercury was contained within the bell-shaped container. The mercury was spun at extremely high RPMs, revolutions, in opposite directions. Same thing happens at the Large Hadron Collider. The spinning of particles at nearly light speed in opposite directions. Think of the Nazi Bell as the first generation of the Large Hadron Collider. That machine also generated synchrotron energies, gamma rays, and many of the first round of scientists working on the Nazi Bell were actually killed by the gamma rays, and they had to bring in more scientists and so forth and so on. So when we think of what's going on with CERN, we need to be thinking about what happened with the Nazis in World War II with the Bell Project. This also has to do with the creating of torsion fields. And I know you guys have heard about these and you've had guests on that talked about torsion fields. This is one of the hidden components of the functioning of this synchrotron particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider and the Nazi Bell. They both created torsion fields. Torsion fields can create a portal and they can distort the timeline. They can mess with, if you will, the fabric of time and space. So yes, they were trying to open a portal for communication to let small numbers of entities through to advance their Nazi agenda.
Interesting. Very, very, very well explained. They're top secret projects, and I know Steve Quayle writes about this, the Nazi Bell. Um, this is just incredible. All of this is making sense now, or at least connecting the dots to get a larger.
Mm-hmm.
Folks,
let's go back
go ahead.
just a little bit further. Think about Tesla. Nazi Bell technology was an outgrowth of Tesla's technology. Everything that was stolen from Tesla basically is being used by CERN today. That's the short answer.
Wow. Okay. A convergence here of technology, right? That we're seeing today.
I like to call it the coalescence.
Coalescence.
That's the title of the third book in the trilogy, if there's time to finish it. I keep talking about that, but I am so overwhelmed with research and so much information, as I said at the beginning of the show, that's coming in, that's being revealed. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish the third book because it would be a disservice to the public that you and I serve. We need to get this information out. It's streaming into you guys and to me. We need to get it out in rapid fashion. There are a lot of people that have never heard anything about the topics that we've talked about tonight, but there's a lot more that we need to present, a lot more. And so I'm not going to be so vain as to try to publish a third book, but I do call it coalescence for a reason, and that's what's happening this year.
Wow.
If you could, Mr. Patch, can you explain for those who may be hearing you the first time, the concept of Jacob's ladder?
That's good.
Yeah.
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 Please help me out on this one.
Sure. Remember the Birkeland currents I mentioned, that they're trying to create a plasma conduit to reconnect Saturn and the Earth. That's Jacob's ladder. There's a great website I really encourage people to go take a look at that I really credit with a lot of the things that I have come up with, the connecting of the dots that I have done, like you say, and that's the Thunderbolts Project. Thunderbolts Project is all about the electric model of the universe. They have some tremendous graphics in there, some great videos. They talk about not necessarily Jacob's ladder specifically, because they steer away from the biblical references, but they show the Birkeland currents in the ancient times, in the golden age of the golden age of Chronos. If you're standing on the Earth and you're looking up at the southern pole of Saturn, and it's connected by an electrical pathway, a conduit of two twisted strands, just like DNA, twisted strands of charged particles. They're oppositely charged particles that form a twisted pair, much like telephone lines, that travel out into the heavens between the two planets. When you're standing on Earth and looking up at Saturn, it looks like almost like a pyramid, an elongated pyramid. It looks like a ladder ascending to the heavens. And that's how it was described in the ancient times, because they could not describe the physics that I just gave you a thumbnail sketch of.
I'm going to need more duct tape to wrap around my head to keep it from just exploding. I mean, this is the information here is wow, a lot of stuff. And I know wow is that's my go-to. That's my go-to word. Yeah, that's my go-to word. All right. So
I love the questions. Love the questions.
yeah, we're getting so many questions here. The I don't even know where to go with the questions. I guess the well, Joe. I mean, do you have anything over there? Because I don't want to overtake.
I have a question here. Not sure, Mr. Patch, if you have an answer to this or want to comment on this. This is from Lois. She says, in Revelation, it says they will seek death and not find it.
I'm glad you went there.
And she asks, is this because they will not be entirely human?
Yes. There's two things happening. It's describing the hybrids that we mentioned a moment ago, but more specifically, let's go to DNA. Our DNA already is being changed, courtesy of not only GMO foods, but our environment, the pollution, the radiation from Fukushima. All of those things are factoring into it, but deliberately, our DNA is being changed at the molecular, but more specifically at the nanoscale, a billionth of a meter scale. Our DNA is being changed by nanoparticles that we have inhaled, ingested, absorbed into our bodies. There are some interesting literature that I was reading just today that came out in 2013 that said that they expect in 2013, by the end of the year, that 88% of the human population will have nanoparticles, these nanoparticles in their body. Well, you can certainly extrapolate that and say in 2016, 100% of the population now has nanoparticles in them. Specifically to the question, this is changing our DNA. There are particles that are actively changing our DNA right now. There are others that are laying dormant. The dormant ones will be activated by microwave transmission. The microwave transmitters are satellite-based and Earth-based and also drone-based. Now, there's a book company, I'll call it, that is going to be making deliveries by drone. I'll probably get in trouble, but, there's nothing to say that drones won't be equipped to have small microwave transmitters in them, as well as satellites and cell phone towers. The purpose of transmitting these microwave signals is to activate the dormant nanoparticles that reside in every person. What is going to happen is that people who have not made the choice to accept, or excuse me, to deny, those that refuse to take the mark of the beast, and we can talk about rapture and, left behind and all that. But if we're talking about people that are still here and have to make the decision whether or not to take the mark of the beast, those that do take the mark of the beast will not have the protection of the Holy Spirit that we talked about, will not have the ability to be shielded. I mean, from a physics standpoint, they will not be shielded by the Holy Spirit from the microwave energy. The microwave signals, the energy, will activate the nanoparticles. They'll change the DNA and change our minds. And therefore will also, for a short period of time, these same people will appear to be immortal, and they will be deceived into thinking that they have achieved that grand goal, that promise of Lucifer from the Garden of Eden, that ye shall be as gods and you will live as an immortal God. And for that short period of time, they will think that they've achieved that goal.
What's okay? Yeah, hold that thought.
Sorry, I tend to overload you guys with too many topics.
Okay, so I guess my question at this point would be if our DNA, and I'll stipulate that I believe it is being corrupted and changed, obviously not for the good, but for the worse. This is the same set of circumstances that happened as in the time of Noah, correct? So, I mean, not using the same, or who knows, but regardless, God won't let this happen again, right?
Well, like in Daniel, it talks about the end times where it says, and they will, as iron mixes with miry clay, they shall try to cleave, or they shall try to mingle their seed, but they shall not cleave, saying almost that they will try, but will not be successful in merging again.
That's right. That's right. It will not be successful. Short-lived, short time frame, short battle. They lose at the end of the battle.
Okay.
So the corruption of our DNA will be done away with, just like in the days of Noah.
All right. So just to be clear, to the believers out there, to those who have given their lives over to our Lord and Savior and have the armor of God, what you're saying, if I hear you right, is we, us, collectively and individually, we're not going to be affected,
right?
Or we're not going to be here to be affected.
It depends on your theology, so to speak. If you adhere to the doctrine of the rapture, then we will not be here. And those that are left behind, who then need to make that choice to accept the mark of the beast or not, if they accept Christ, they will be protected by the Holy Spirit, by the full armor of God, from the electromagnetic signals, the microwaves, that will activate the dormant DNA, the dormant nanoparticles.
Gotcha. Very diplomatic answer, by the way. Okay. That's very, okay. Yeah, how can we tell, or can we tell, that our DNA is being changed? Is there any way to tell?
Well,
I mean, symptoms, signs?
I think,
sorry.
Yeah, I think that already we're seeing the signs in the terms of the greater degree of cancers that are spreading around, and also the genetically modified organisms and viruses that are being spread around the planet. So we're seeing those things happening. Many of the quote pandemics or smaller outbreaks are all genetically modified viruses. These are man-made constructs that are then released for reasons of testing spreading, testing human reaction, testing the human behavior models to see how people deal with the spread of diseases. And then it segues right into the whole discussion of vaccines. Many times, the pandemics are created on purpose to get people to used to seeking their government and vaccines for answers, for solutions, for protection. But what's coming, there is no vaccine for.
Hmm. The video that you and JD Neptune Diaries did, Anthony Patch, folks, is our guest, anthonypatch.com. The video that you did on Cern and disclosure, you mentioned the Internet of Things, the smart appliances. And now it's being made known that, the TVs and the various appliances can, in fact, send signals back to or communications back to a database.
Oh, yeah.
But how does this fit into everything? I mean, if you can take this a step further than what you addressed in your video, how does this connect into everything? Is this going to be the mechanism that the market or the Antichrist will use to stamp everyone?
This is the mechanism. Many people have heard that Cern was the start of the internet. It was the building block. It was the start. It was the purpose of distribution of scientific information and data to laboratories around the world in a collaborative process of running experiments. That is still being done today. CERN is the beast system. There's a lot that I can add to this, but in short answer, CERN is the beast system. The internet is the World Wide Web that has entrained and enveloped everyone on the planet now. It is the control mechanism. In Scripture, we hear that if you don't take the mark of the beast, you will not be able to buy or sell. Well, the internet is the marketplace. You will not be able to have access to the internet, to the marketplace, unless you are part of that beast system. So part of this is being connected, quite literally, every person on the planet to CERN. Now, I keep saying CERN, and people think, maybe that's, just over the top to put everything under that umbrella and to connect everything to that machine. But you've got to understand that the internet is CERN and vice versa. The distribution channel for scientific research from CERN, just to step aside for just a moment as a footnote, when they collide particles, they generate massive amounts of data. That data is distributed through what's called the Energy Sciences Network 5. That is a fiber optic system with incredible throughput. The system that is coming is called the Helix Nebula. Helix, just like our DNA helix. Helix Nebula, you talk about a cloud-based server system. Now we're talking about nebula level, go from cloud to nebula to the cosmos in terms of the server system, the size of it, the data crunching that can take place. You have a European system that is being connected to the United States and basically already is, but implemented around the world is this Helix Nebula system. That is the data distribution system for all commerce in the world, not just scientific data. This is connected to the computer that I keep talking about that is artificially intelligent. The Model 2048, there's the title of my second book. The Model 2048, a diabatic quantum computer, in 2015, in February, it was released by the manufacturer, made public. The thing that they left out was the fact that it is artificially intelligent. In 2010, the manufacturer said by 2016, we will have an artificially intelligent quantum computer that has the equivalent processing power of 7 billion human brains. Now, they, in their press release in February of last year, said, yes, it does have 7 billion the equivalency of 7 billion brains. They left out the AI component of it. This is the beast system. That computer is connected to Cern, to the Helix Nebula, to the ESNet 5, to the internet. You now have an artificially intelligent computer that is running the internet. I'll stop there.
Yeah, you think you? I thought I knew stuff. Okay, it's no coincidence 7 billion, the power of 7 billion brains, or the capacity, right? I mean, that's no coincidence, correct?
No,
right.
That's right.
So what's?
And don't forget, it's interdimensional. Don't forget that component.
Yeah, let's throw that in there too. Okay, that makes me feel all right. All right. Wow.
Anthony, this question is from a regular listener and caller named Charlotte. And they ask, when do you think the elite first got serious about starting CERN and reconnecting to Saturn? Or is this a continuation of the building of Tower of Babel?
Bingo, right on the head, Tower of Babel. Continuation. It's been the agenda. It's been the goal. It's been the movement of technology. It's been the seeking of that higher technology from the other side. It's the Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
It's the Jack Parsons JPL. It has been the seeking of this higher technology that the Tower of Babel represented more, and manifests itself more in a spiritual way than it did in a technological way. The Tower of Babel was a spiritual outreach to the other side. That was destroyed, and they were left with having to seek nuts and bolts technology to reach to the other side. And yes, most definitely, this goes beyond the 1954 breaking of the ground at Cern, Switzerland. That device, that whole agenda for Cern initially was for the modeling in the computer of nuclear explosions. They couldn't, with SALT treaties and nuclear test ban treaties, we were not allowed to detonate warheads above ground or below ground anymore, and in particular in the atmosphere. So they turned to computer modeling. That's what CERN was created to do. It was for the purpose of modeling atomic warheads and advancing that. The purpose of atomic, and people probably don't know this, but the purpose of the atomic bomb wasn't to blow people up. It was to tear a fabric in space.
Yeah.
And that's what CERN has always been about, tearing a hole in space.
I remember, and obviously I'm too young to remember when the atom bomb was developed and how they announced it and rolled it out. But the scientists, I know as much from watching documentaries and reading history, that the scientists were concerned that the exploding the atomic bomb would ignite the whole universe, had the potential to ignite the whole universe, kind of like CERN had the potential to open a black hole and destroy Earth in one foul swoop.
They were worried that it would ignite the atmosphere. Stephen Hawking, physicist extraordinaire, came out a couple of years ago and said, I'm concerned that CERN, the LHC, will not necessarily create black holes that'll get out of control, which was his early concern. He definitely had an early concern to that. But he was more concerned that they were going to create bubbles, vacuum bubbles, that would immediately, at the speed of light, envelop the Earth, possibly enveloping the entire universe as we know it in a vacuum bubble. In other words, taking what we consider to be the known universe and inverting it, changing it into a completely different state of matter and energy. That's what he was afraid of. And he is coming out and did this 2 years ago and said, don't flip the switch. You don't want to be communicating with the other side. You don't know what's on the other side. And even if you do, you don't want to have come through into our realm of existence what is on the other side. He's deathly afraid of this machine.
All right.
That's telling.
We have an academic, a scholar that is, I'm not going to give the name out, but everyone would know his name listening to this program, wanting to know or wanting you to address, if you could, the positioning of the Vatican hierarchy right now, specifically the Jesuit Pope Francis, the timing of that and the intent of that, ultimately, the intent of that, beyond perhaps
Mhm.
what you referenced earlier.
Well, the Vatican runs the world. People don't realize that all law, common law, everything stems from the Vatican. And the Jesuit system of the priesthood coming down from the Pope, we talk about the pyramid, the Jesuits run everything, so to speak, and it moves on from there to your politicians and your bankers and your corporations. Everybody takes their marching orders from the Pope in the final analysis. And that's why you see governments like ours fawning over the Pope when he comes to the United States. He's the false prophet. He's the one who's going to be standing next to the Antichrist. And it's the one that is in power right now. And they're tied into physics. We see that with their Lucifer telescope. They have all of the occult practices, the scientific knowledge hidden away in the Vatican that is being used at Cern. Tesla only touched on it. Tesla only got a little bit of it. Everything that is being used today comes straight out of the Vatican.
I think that's probably where that where the person wanted you to go. I mean that's yeah. All right. Now, you made a statement in that answer about the Antichrist, and I think you referenced that Antichrist being in power, the one that's in power now. Is that referencing the Antichrist or the one that's referencing?
I was referencing the Pope
The
that's
Pope?
in power.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right. Well, then that would stand to reason that the Antichrist has got to be visible right now, or in a position of power, or a
Well,
position somewhere, right?
in my belief, speaking only for myself, I believe that we will be raptured and then the Antichrist will be revealed. Whether you're talking pre, mid, post rapture, trib rapture, whatever the discussion is, but we will not know his identity until after the rapture. And those that are left behind will then know who he is. I believe he's alive here on the planet right now as a fully formed person, not as a spiritual entity any longer. And, I don't know who it is, and it would be ridiculous and it would be heretical for me to even try to
Sure.
put a name to who he is.
Well, no, I think what you said though is sufficient. I think that gives everyone, myself included, kind of an idea of the time period in which we live. Because looking at the Vatican, the position there, the false prophet, and then of course, yeah, I mean, so the time is late. The time is very short. One would,
I agree.
so
I agree.
and that would compel me, and I mean, everyone should understand that and take that as a warning because we need to get right. We need to understand the time is short. We need to not just play our positions, but also to turn ourselves over to God. And I think that's really the most important message here. Wow. All right.
It is. It is. That's our purpose. Our mission, our goal, I'm speaking for myself, but I think I can easily embrace this with you guys, is that we're not here to make a bunch of money, sell a bunch of books, scare people, pontificate, make ourselves look more than what we are. We are servants. I've been through the stripping down and the humbling process in my life and down on my knees before Jesus Christ. I know you guys have as well. It's like saying you don't need to go through all that. You don't need to go through all the things that we've been through to get to where we are today. If you'll simply operate from faith that Jesus Christ loves you, God loves you, God has a great sense of humor. He's laughing at what's going on, even as terrible as it all looks and portends to be. He does have a sense of humor in the sense of he's laughing at Satan and his minions. we all encourage you, Joe, Doug, myself, JD, we all encourage you guys to really take to heart what we're saying, that this is the God's honest truth, what we speak here, and our mission is just to save souls. It's as simple as that. We're here to save souls.
Amen.
Yeah.
Mr. Patch, we got about 10 minutes left in the program. One question here I'd like to ask: what is the UN's role with CERN?
Well, UN functions to further the agendas. People want to talk about the Illuminati and secret societies and even the Vatican, but they really are nothing more than just a mouthpiece for the politicians and the corporations. They really hold no real power. They really are ceremonial. And behind the scenes, the occult practices are put into practice in the halls of the United Nations. There is a temple to Satan in the United Nations headquarters. There are murals in the headquarters, much like you would find at the Denver International Airport. There are murals that depict the future of what is coming to this planet. That is nothing more than a Luciferian organization, as a short answer.
Okay.
It's funny you mentioned the Denver airport. I mean, it's relevant, obviously. Not the murals, the artifacts there, not for our benefit, but for the opposition, for the Luciferians, the bad guys, so to speak, right?
And we were actually there once, and we didn't get to see the murals. We were coming from Montana and catching a connecting flight from Denver to Cleveland, and we saw these holograms or hieroglyphs all throughout the floor, all over the airport. We didn't get a chance to see the murals and whatnot, but there were, just like you would expect to see in the Giza pyramids, these hieroglyphs all over
was
the floor.
strange, wasn't it, Joe?
It was very strange. There was no rhyme or reason for them to be there, unless there is much more to the Denver airport than we are led to believe, which we know there is, with all the symbolism that is open and that has been investigated, and even the deity Anubis, the god of death, the horse, was brought in and set up there. But those hieroglyphs, those really bothered me, because we didn't know what they were, and that's one thing that's not talked about too much when the Denver airport is brought up.
What's their purpose?
Well, as we know, that symbols have power. They have power to channel negative energy, evil energy. That's a temple. We know that underneath the airport are the so-called deep underground military bases. We know that that place is just an amalgamation of tunnels and living quarters, and essentially a city residing beneath that. And that's all been presented by people much more knowledgeable than me. But that essentially above ground functions as a temple to Satan. They are telegraphing in the murals what's coming. We've all heard and we all know of the theory that they have to tell us ahead of time. They have to tell their victims ahead of time what they're going to do. And the murals serve that purpose. But the markings on the floor are spiritual and ritualistic channeling of power into that temple. And that is where the elite will gather in the final days. And they believe that they're going to be safe there, as they ask and they beg for the rocks, the mountains, to fall upon them to seal them from the wrath of God.
No, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and about the symbols, you said something very important. Symbols, if we want to talk about alphabets and the language, were the original language, especially of the mystery religions that lived on from Sumeria and Babylon through Egypt till today. This is what Freemasonry uses, and these other secret societies. This is how they communicate, by these symbols. and they have
Correct.
a vast importance in the world of secret societies and in the gnosis aspect. Um, and this is why we see
Those,
them today. And the logos from the TV, from Columbia to NASA, and they all serve purposes, and they're all
and
spiritual in
those
nature.
they communicate to the other side. The entities that already are in communication on this side with us, they communicate through those symbols. Those are doorways. Those are gateways of communication. The symbols represent power and they represent information conduits. And we also have, not the same, but we have the similar idea at Cern, in which we have the ancient Sanskrit and Hebraic and Chinese, cuneiform, Egyptian writings that are on papyrus and animal skins and are presented and displayed behind curved panels of glass within the headquarters at Cern. I mean, people know about the statue of Shiva that sits outside the headquarters, but many people don't know about these writings that are inside the headquarters. These are used in the rituals that are conducted, just like the video put out by Cern called Symmetry early last year. That's a ritual. That is all about communication. And these papyrus and animal skin writings are for ceremonies to um, enact sounds and frequencies, to initiate sounds and frequencies for opening the portal, and for communicating instructions to the other side from our side. So yeah, symbols are very important.
Very interesting. We have about 5 minutes left, Mr. Patch. I'm going to turn it to you. Well, about 4.5 minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to you. Anything that we haven't talked about, touched upon, that you'd like to really get into, well, or like to address here before we close, please do so. And even promote whatever you would like to promote. You have free reign.
Well, I think, you asked the question about halfway through this evening, what kinds of things can we see that will tell us what's going on when we're talking about nanoparticles and DNA, but also the physical environment itself. We're seeing the planet being terraformed. We're seeing earthquakes and volcanoes like we've never seen in recorded history. This is tangible evidence that the planet is being changed from within. It's being changed by what happens at CERN. It's being changed by what they produced in the form of strangelets. And what the magnets of the machine also affects the magnetosphere. We didn't talk about the magnetosphere and the changing of the electromagnetic energy of this planet and the Schumann resonance and the electric model of the universe and that versus the cover story, which is the gravitational model of the universe. There's a lot more that we could get into that's going on that we haven't touched upon, but the basic idea here is that you can look around the planet and you can see the evidence of evil at work. You don't have to believe me and Doug and Joe or anybody else. You can go out there and see it yourself. Ask yourself, is it a good thing that we have more earthquakes of large magnitude and volcanoes going off like crazy around this planet? Is it a good thing that we still have Fukushima spewing radiation all over the Pacific and killing the fish and the wildlife and about to kill many, many humans on this planet? I mean, is it good that science is terraforming? Forget global warming. Science is changing this planet for the purpose of creating an environment that will support a new race of beings. They truly believe that they're going to create their version of heaven on earth, the new Garden of Eden. They're changing the planet. And that should be enough to get people to wake up and say, okay, science is wrong. The direction that humankind is going in is wrong. We need to turn to someone else for the answers. And the answers come from the Bible. And the person to turn to is Jesus Christ.